Welcome into the inaugural Man vs. Machine show, where we put up arguably the smartest person in the sports betting industry, Ed Feng, up against myself, Drew Martin, who is just a mere mortal, and we go over a few games from the college football upcoming card. Ed, welcome into the show. I'm excited to have you. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. Excited to be doing the show. How you doing, Drew?
I'm doing good. You know, we were just talking off air about opening weekend of college football, loving how they kind of spread it out from Thursday to Monday. It's just day after day after day of good college football matchups. So I can't wait, man. What about you?
Yeah, no, I'm super excited. We're doing this on Wednesday. 8 p.m. Thursday night. I think, Ohio State and Indiana, that's Big Ten action. Like, you're getting one of the best teams in the nation going on the road for an opponent that really likes them. It starts tomorrow and it just doesn't stop. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, and most people, a lot of people are out there saying like Bloomington, isn't a tough place to play. But man, you talk about opening week, that place is going to be going crazy, right, hosting Ohio State.
It is.
I'm not touching that one.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
For sure, bro. Hey, but we went over the card before the show. Ed came up with a couple games he wanted to talk about. I threw out a couple games I wanted to talk about. We'll have differing opinions as far as I'll be coming at it from more of an X's and O's standpoint. Ed, he's a huge numbers guy, running the numbers. So we'll have some disagreement. We'll also be agreeing on some games throughout the season. But anyway, let's get right into it. Ed, let's start off game number 191, 192. It starts 6:15 Eastern, featured on ESPN. The total 45.5. We got the Sun Belt going up against the SEC. We got the App State Mountaineers, a decade removed, the 10-year reunion from beating Michigan, going in between the hedges, taking on the Georgia Bulldogs, -14, -14.5, depending where you shop. Where are you looking to bet this one, Ed?
Well, I love that you bring this one up first because, Georgia, by my numbers, by my preseason model, is pretty close to where everyone expects. They're about 15th, 16th in the polls. They're about 18th in my numbers. And of course, you bring me on as the machine, as the guy who's supposed to bring the analytics along. And this game is all about where I think this Georgia program is headed. We saw Kirby Smart in his first year. He really had a lot of pieces, a lot of talent from the Richt administration left over, and it was really kind of a disappointing season. And I'm not sure where this program is headed. Numbers wise, I slightly like App State. I think it's plus 14.5 right now. And I think Kirby Smart has a lot to prove this year. There's kind of there was kind of no excuse last year. There's definitely not an excuse this year. He's got a ton of pieces on that defense. I think the defense was pretty disappointing last year. And he's got a lot of pieces back. They should be really good. They should really get back into that top 10, top 15 type defenses we've seen from a Georgia program, like a team that can recruit with basically any program in the country. I think we really need to see Kirby Smart's program get back to that defensive level of excellence, and then what happens with the quarterback? What happens with playing a true freshman last year? Are you going to see the benefits of this season, or is Jacob Eason your classic big athlete with a strong arm that disappoints at the college level because he's not accurate enough?
Yeah, no, you bring up some good points. And as far as the projection of the program, I don't necessarily disagree with you. I kind of look at it as I'm not exactly sure where Georgia's going, but for this game, I'm actually looking to lay it with the favorite. And it seems like when you look at the mainstream media, there's a lot of people jumping on this App State train, and I'm sure you've looked at the numbers that point that way. But when I break down this game, I look at UGA. They're returning 10 starters on defense. Pretty much their whole up front is all returning on the defensive line rotation. And we all know in the SEC, that's kind of where defensive linemen are pretty much, raised down there. So I think it's going to be a long day for Taylor Lamb. Taylor Lamb, yeah, he's a good quarterback on the App State side. Arguably the best in the Sun Belt, but he's not as mobile. His athletic ability isn't, top of the charts. So I kind of think it's going to be a long day for him going up against a really good defensive line. And also I'm going to bring up the point of, App State, they've surprised last year. They obviously, 10 years ago. So it's kind of like They're on everybody's radar already. And when we start talking about this point spread, we're talking about 14. We're not talking about 28. So as far as 2 touchdowns at home to the higher caliber of athlete that the SEC possesses with the Georgia Bulldogs, I don't mind laying the 14, but I could see the argument for 14 and a half.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's another story from the number side of it of what App State's been able to do. We kind of I like that you brought up they're beating Michigan. I live here in Ann Arbor. No one likes to talk about that game, even though they did end up beating App State a couple years ago here. So they were really high back then. They kind of had a lull within the last 10 years, but what the numbers show is that they've made a drastic increase each of the last 3 seasons. Scott Satterfield's done a really good job. Clearly, that kind of tops out when you're a Sun Belt program. I don't think we can project App State to just kind of keep increasing at the rate they're going. But I mean, you have that aspect. You have a quarterback that's coming back. And then the question I got to ask you, Drew, about Georgia is we expected a lot out of this defense last year. I don't remember the exact number, but there were a lot of pieces on that defense coming back. I just feel like I'm not exactly sure how Georgia pulled it off, but it feels like they've had 18 and 17 returning starters each of the last 2 years. And I just expected the production last year. We didn't get it, and that just makes me question what's going on in the program heading into 2017.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and I guess I can't answer it for sure. There's obviously the side of the argument that if you return a lot on defense, but the defense wasn't all that good last year, who's to say they're going to be good this year? I will say on the Jacob Eason, though, argument, he was a freshman last year, and the offseason after your first year of starting, that's usually a really good increase in production for your sophomore year. So that's why I kind of am looking for Georgia to really improve, at least offensively, with Jacob Eason. But so, Ed, you're looking to take the App State Mountaineers plus the points?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you can get it over 14. I'm going to side with the App State. Just one note on Eason, 55% completion percentage last year. I wish I had kind of seen more games to put that in context. I don't know if he was bombing it deep a lot because he was trying to come back in games. FBS average is 60, so you really kind of worry when you see a guy that's below that average. Even as a true freshman last year, maybe you shouldn't have been out there, but definitely something I'm looking at. Can the guy be accurate? You need some accuracy from your quarterback to win games in the SEC. Can he do that?
Yeah, and that's what I guess my argument was. The first offseason after being the starter, I look for accuracy to improve the most, just because you get a better understanding of the offense. But, I don't know if I gave Ed the proper introduction. He's got, a PhD from Stanford and went to Rice. Is that correct, Ed?
That is true. I watched my 2 teams play while I was waiting for the fight on Saturday night, and that pretty much went as expected. But yeah, I appreciate it. The PhD, they're just initials. It's kind of in a past life, and they gave me a little bit of an edge now. And I definitely like to do that, but there's a lot more to finding edges than just cranking through numbers. And that's really what I hope to bring to the show. I mean, we're calling it man versus machine, but I really kind of hope it's 2 men and one of them kind of drags the machine along.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to look at it, because you obviously know what you're talking about, so bringing the numbers into it is a good thing. So it looks like Ed's going to be on App State. We'll give him plus 14.5, because we are going to be able to shop around on these. So when I give out a side, I'm going to take the best of the number. We're going to use SBR odds page, find which book has the best number for my side, also which book has the number for Ed's side. So there will be possible opportunities to have kind of a difference there. And it looks like, Ed, if you're going to take App State, we can give you 14.5, and that's at Intertops. On the other side, I will take Georgia minus 14. We can find that at BetOnline right now. Again, we're talking right now. It's Wednesday afternoon. Costa Rica time is about 1 o'clock. Eastern time is 3 o'clock. But Ed, let's move on to the next one. Game number 207-208. The Troy Trojans make the long trip to Boise, Idaho, take on Boise State. It looks like Chris is hanging about a 10.5. BetOnline is hanging at 11. We got a total of 62. How are you feeling in this game?
So this is one that the numbers really like Troy. I think they expect them to lose, but I think the spread is about 4. And really what the numbers see is a Boise State team that hasn't been near their height, near 2010, 2011 during the Kellen Moore years. Over the last 4 years, they really haven't been an elite type team, an elite top 25 type team. And one of the ways that, all right, I mean, the pure strength of my numbers is the way that I can accurately account for strength of schedule. And that's really important with Boise State because they play in the Mountain West. And for example, in the Mountain West, San Diego State had a pretty decent rating. I think they were in the top 40. But Boise and Colorado State, they were more in the 60s last year when you finally adjust for who they played. So really what that's saying is when you look at what they did and how much they beat teams by in the Mountain West, when you adjust for that, the numbers aren't liking Boise as much over the last 4 years, and I think that's partially that conference. And so when I project that out into this next season, they're a lot closer to this Troy team than I think the odds makers are putting out there.
Okay, no, that makes sense. And as far as your Sun Belt numbers, do you have Troy as the highest rated Sun Belt team, Ed?
I believe I do. I'd have to check on that. I mean, it's either them or App State. But I mean, I think actually, I want to, you are the kind of expert at these small schools, these small conferences. I'd really like to get your opinion on Troy, too, because I kind of like their trajectory, kind of like their quarterback, and like to get your opinion on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, Neil Brown, their coach, he has really done a great job. He's in his third year, which also outside of this is a year that I actually look to bet on coaches rebuilding programs. Neil Brown, he was the offensive coordinator at Kentucky. And before that, a high octane kind of offense guy. So him having Brandon Silvers as his quarterback, a veteran kid from the panhandle there of Florida. He didn't get the big offers from Auburn, Alabama, Florida State. So Troy scooped him up. He was kind of under recruited. A guy that I actually think has next level potential at the quarterback position, even though he's playing in the Sun Belt. And Troy recruits at such a high level, mainly due to their location. So they will have the athletes, but going up against Boise State, I guess I'm kind of jaded being the man on the show instead of the machine. I was on ULL last year, Lafayette making this same trip out to Boise State, and they went and got their doors blown off like 45-10. So I'm kind of jaded in doing this again with Troy because it's kind of the same setup, similar type programs, although Troy has a lot better quarterback than Lafayette did last year. So as far as a side, I'm not as gung-ho on Boise State or Troy, really. I kind of like both of these quarterbacks, Ed. I mean, we're talking Brett Rippon and Brandon Silvers. I think that this total's a little low at 62. Do you have any opinion on the total?
I don't, except I went through a phase where I really liked Boise State unders last year, and then I remember watching Rippon play and be like, that's really not a good idea. I mean, that kid's got a cannon. He's accurate. Definitely a guy with next level type potential. And no, I don't have an opinion on total. I do like the side. I just feel like this is a year. Boise's kind of been over since 2013. I had them 2.5 points better than FBF's average. Then I had them 9 points. Then I had them 5.7, and then they dropped to 3.7. Yeah, I mean that's kind of where I'm bringing this in. And then you look at what they bring back, and they're losing a lot of guys. A lot of their skill players on offense. They're losing 3 all-conference performers on the offensive line, and they need to replace 4 of their top 6 defensive backs on the defense. So I have the utmost respect for this Boise State program. I do expect them to, I do think this is kind of the floor for them, which is a little weird because they've won a lot of games over the last couple of years. But when you kind of look at my numbers, being only 4 points better than FBS averages, I think a floor for this program. So they should be going up. But then you look at the trajectory of Troy, and you really like that, especially with a senior quarterback. Silvers was, not particularly efficient. They had the 87th out of 128 FBS teams in terms of pass efficiency. So that's looking at yards per attempt adjusted for strength of schedule. As a senior, that could definitely go up. And their defense was 43rd by my numbers last year. A very high rank for a Sun Belt program. And I just don't think it's the same story as that Lafayette team last year. I don't think the Lafayette team was, a team that had that good a defense. And it's just a different story. So,
yeah, no, great point. I mean, the programs are similar, but to carry over what one team was last year and carry that over to the next, it's something I got to get out of my head. But you bring up some good points, and we were talking about this game because Ed was going to be on Troy and I was going to be on Boise State. But actually breaking down the numbers of what you said about Boise State and going up against Troy, I kind of changed my tune to the total. So sorry for changing it up on you, Ed, but I kind of like this over 62. Cool. But I guess that's what the show is about, is trying to come up with the best numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that makes me hesitate a little bit is the Troy defense that does have a lot of guys coming back. But on the Smurf turf, they're going to be at home. Ripon is clearly a good quarterback, and I can definitely see them putting up some points.
All right, and that game will be at 3:30 Eastern on ESPNU on Saturday. We got one more coming to you on Sunday night. He's Ed Feng. I'm Drew Martin. This is Man vs. Machine. We will do a new show each Wednesday throughout the college football season where we pick out a couple matchups, try to get disagreement, and then explain why, see if we can come up with, uncover anything that the numbers and the X's and O both agree on or disagree on, and we'll keep a record going forward. But Ed, last game here. We got 2-11, 2-12 going on Sunday night. We got the SEC going against the Pac-12. Big matchup here. The Texas A&M Aggies head out to L.A., take on the UCLA Bruins. We got -3 as the spread pretty much across the board, 57 as the total. Two sixth-year head coaches going at it. How you feeling about Texas A&M versus UCLA?
So I understand why UCLA is the favorite. You just got to kind of point to the quarterback position and look at, potential NFL first-round pick and Josh Rosen versus a coach and Kevin Sumlin who refuses to announce a starter. So I get where that's coming from. I get where UCLA is going to be the favorite in this game. My numbers really see this as a toss-up game, and I think that just comes from looking at the rest of the programs. And I do want your opinion on these quarterbacks, Drew, because you are the ex-quarterback, but just from the rest of the program, Texas A&M plays a really tough strength of schedule in the SEC. Particularly in the SEC West over the last couple of years. When you make the strength of schedule adjustments and then you look at kind of the program history, A&M usually ends up, top 20. I think they're 20th in the preseason this year. And I think you kind of got to look past the 8 wins. You kind of got to look past the late season difficulties that this program has had because any program is going to have late season difficulties when you're playing Alabama, LSU, and the rest of those teams in the SEC West. I mean, that certainly doesn't mean Kevin Sumlin is going to survive as a coach, but there's a lot of talent on this team. The defense has gotten a lot better. The run defense has gotten a lot better. And they've pretty much been a steady program over the last 4 years when you look at their rating. So when you look at what my algorithm says they've been compared to an FBS average team. On the flip side, UCLA is in a rapid decline. They, especially 2 years ago, they were one of the most disappointing programs to me. Jim Mora had some success. They had a lot of returning starters and really had a pretty awful season. I think that was Rosen's first year. He gets hurt last year, which perhaps explains their record and their fall. But you need to expect quite a significant bounce back from UCLA this year and the quarterback to really think that they should be favored by 3.
Yeah,
but I'd love your take on the quarterbacks.
Yeah, as far as the quarterback goes, one thing, I mean, I think Josh Rosen is really good, and you bring up some good points on UCLA kind of being a downward spiral. I think Josh Rosen may be able to kind of have that Marcus Mariota effect where he can kind of cover up some of those holes by being a really good quarterback. We all know what that means in the college football game. On the Texas A&M side, I don't really dig too much into it because I actually admire Kevin Sumlin not saying who the quarterback is going to be. I think that that's actually an advantage for Texas A&M. I don't know why every coach in America that's not returning their starting quarterback doesn't do the same thing. I think it's an advantage for Texas A&M not to let UCLA know who their quarterback is. Do you agree?
I kind of hadn't thought about it in that way, but Florida is not announcing who their quarterback's going to be as well, and maybe that's to their advantage. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess Jim Harbaugh is doing the opposite thing, and I think they finally released the roster today, so they'll know who's going to be out on the field. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, wasn't there?
No, I was just going to say, do you does Texas A&M losing Garrett off the defensive line affect your numbers at all?
Yeah, for sure. Myles Garrett affects my numbers in the sense that he counts as a lost starter. And this is definitely one of the deficiencies in my model. He's considered the same as any other lost starter. And there's clearly differences when you have elite pass rushers like Myles Garrett and elite quarterbacks like Deshaun Watson. So perhaps maybe their defense should take a little bit more of a slide. But this is a defense that's gotten a lot better. The coordinators come in and really done a good job. They were like literally awful against the rush for a couple years in a row. That's gotten significantly better. And which is kind of interesting too, because UCLA was 126th in my rush offense rankings out of 128 teams. Like, a power program should never be that bad in anything. I don't care what statistic it is. You should never be 126th out of 128 teams. And this is UCLA too, right? Like, this isn't Kansas. So I definitely expect a lot out of Rosen, but we will see what the rest of that offense can do in terms of the line, in terms of the running game. And, if Texas A&M can make Rosen very one-dimensional, I think it's going to be a long night for them.
Yeah, no, I don't. This is a tough one for me because I hate going up against the SEC West when they play teams outside of the SEC West, but I'm going to do it here. I just think you get the better quarterback at home. So I'm going to go UCLA -3, and it's -3 across the board. And Ed, on record, you're going with the Aggies +3?
Yeah, I'm going with Aggies +3. I think I'd balk a little bit, +2.5 maybe. This was 4 when I looked at it earlier this week. So there's been some action towards the SEC there in this game.
Yeah, we got some movement for sure. So looks like Ed's going to be on App State +14.5. I'll be on Georgia -14. Ed will be on Troy +11. And I will actually not disagree with him in that game. I'm going to go on the total and go over 62. But we do have another one with disagreement. Ed's going to be on Texas A&M +3. I'll be on UCLA -3. So we got 2 disagreements, and then I'm on a total. You're on a side, Ed. Any other closing thoughts about this weekend? Maybe some advice you can give to maybe upcoming handicappers on what you're looking for and how to go about maybe taking information you see on week 1 and then using it on the week 2 card?
Yeah, I think the only advice is you really got to be uncomfortable with uncertainty. I think you always need to be uncomfortable with certainty whenever you're wagering on games, but especially week 1, week 2. Just take the Michigan-Florida game, for example. This is something that I like but don't love under 45. I think, Michigan has some issues on the offensive line. They have some issues at quarterback. But on the other hand, Florida lost 2 of their cornerbacks to the second round of the NFL draft. You figure they would regress a little bit in that way. But on the other hand, Florida just seems to pluck NFL draft picks at cornerback off trees down there. So I don't know. I just think you need to embrace the uncertainty. You need to understand that there's a lot of things that you don't know heading into week 1. And no one knows these things. We don't know how they're going to perform until they actually get on the field. And then I actually really like week 2 because it gives you a really interesting opportunity to fade teams that either had a particularly good performance week 1 that was unexpected, or maybe back teams that perform pretty poorly. I actually haven't looked at what BYU LSU spread has changed, but BYU did not look good against Portland State. And Portland State, I had them about an average FCS team last year, so it's not like they're playing North Dakota State or anything as their opener. So yeah, we can get into that more next week, and as we roll on.
Yeah, he's Ed Feng. Find him on Twitter @ThePowerRank. His work on his website where you can find thepowerrank.com. I'm Drew Martin. He's Ed Feng. We'll be back next Wednesday with another Man vs. Machine. Ed, best of luck in opening week college football outside of the 2 games we disagree, bud.
Thanks, man. Best of luck to you too, buddy.
All right, talk to you next week.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to our channel. Now, we've put a lot of work into producing all these free videos, so please help us out and keep all our content free for you forever by simply liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Now, not to mention, a visit to our industry-leading website will warm the hearts of all our SBR employees, especially myself. Now, the links are over there to the left, so do check those out. Thanks for watching.